Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's had the tea and is settled down for a nice hour of question and answer here at Calderdale. And thanks for joining this 1 hour live Q&A session, all about fostering in Calderdale. We're live on Fostering for Calderdale's Facebook page and Calderdale Council's YouTube channel. We've got some really important guests with us tonight, which I'll introduce in a moment. But you may know, many of you will follow Fostering for Calderdale on social media. And we want to provide you with the opportunity to have any questions you may have about fostering in Calderdale answered live during this session, a really good interactive session, we hope. You can submit a question to the panel by commenting in the live chat on either Facebook or YouTube. And we have a number of people back office who'll feed them into us, and then I will feed them to our panel here on live on my screen, actually. The Q&A will be roughly an hour long, and we'll wrap it up at about 8 o'clock. Those of you that haven't had tea can dash off then and have tea or put the kettle on. We'll aim to answer as many questions as possible. If we do miss any questions, we'll aim to reply to them in the comments once the live session is finished. So there's still an opportunity if we've run out of time. The live session will be immediately available to watch back on replay. So don't worry if you've joined late, you can catch up afterwards. So hopefully we've accommodated all possibilities this evening. And now I'll start introductions with our esteemed panel members, as I say. So first of all, we have Bev. Bev, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Bev Jones-Hurst, and I'm the practice manager in the fostering team, and I work in the recruitment and assessment part of the service.
Lovely, thank you, Bev. Now we have Jo.
Hi, I'm Jo Needler. I'm a foster carer for Calderdale and have been fostering for 11 years.
Thank you, Jo. Nice to have you on board. And Kate.
Hi everybody, my name's Kate Duffy. I'm one of the team managers in the fostering service, and I work with Bev alongside the recruitment and assessment within the team, and I also am the fostering panel advisor. So when people come to fostering panel for approval or for review, I will see them when they come to the panel.
Lovely, thanks, Kate. You can see everyone, we've got a really good set of skills here with our fostering expertise here with Jo and our fostering managers. So hopefully we'll be able to answer most of your questions this evening. And just as we start to get our questions from the public in, we've got a couple of questions that we know everyone likes to ask as they start fostering, or they start to think about fostering, should I say. So one of the questions that is usually asked is, what's the difference between adoption and fostering? And I'll ask Kate to just to answer that one, Kate.
Yeah, so there is a difference between adopting a child and fostering a child. If you proceed to adopt a child, you become that child's legal parent, and the child would no longer be looked after by the local authority. Whereas if you become a foster carer, the parental responsibility for that child is shared between the local authority and also the child's birth parents. So there's quite a significant difference. And sometimes people approach us to ask about the differences, because there are some similarities in terms of the assessments and the processes, but in legal terms, the outcomes are very different in terms of your responsibilities as a foster carer and those of an adoptive parent.
Thank you, Kate. And I know that is an area that some people do get a bit mixed up about, don't they? But actually, the legalities are quite different in
that's right. Yeah.
Thank you. Now this is definitely one for Jo. I don't have a spare room, Jo. Can I foster?
Well, you do need a spare room for the children. So a child would need their own room with a window. It's not a Harry Potter setup. I know that's been some questions that I've been asked in the past about, oh, well, I've partitioned a room off and is it okay for a child to go in? But they should have a window and their own door to sleep in, and obviously big enough for the bed and the wardrobe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I was just going to add a little bit on, Pam, just in relation
Yes.
to the bedroom question, just following on from what Jo said. We do have some foster carers who obviously would be approved to foster babies or children, sort of up to sort of toddler age. And in that scenario, we would expect, obviously for a tiny baby that they would initially be in the foster carer's bedroom, but then, they would at some point obviously need to move to their own room. And the time at which that would happen might vary depending on the child and the individual circumstances, but it's right that Jo, as Jo said, that ultimately a child would need a bedroom to move into if they were going to remain in that foster home, having been placed as a baby.
How many children could you have in one room? Let's say under 5 years old, if they're the same siblings, if it's if it's two sisters or two brothers in particular.
Yeah, I mean that would depend on the size of the room. Obviously,
Yeah.
it would need to be big enough to accommodate two children, and obviously the storage that they would need. In terms of whether or not foster carers can, this is another question that comes up: whether or not you can be approved to foster more than one child. And the answer is yes, you can. And we would explore that as part of the fostering assessment, thinking about obviously available bedrooms in your home, and how many children you could manage in terms of meeting children's care needs. Siblings can share a bedroom, but if you were fostering more than one child and they were unrelated, then they would need to have their own bedrooms. And the other things to think about where you might foster children who aren't related to one another is whether or not you could manage obviously the different needs of children, from different families, because they will have their own family time arrangements for seeing their own birth family members. They might attend different schools, different activities. So those things are all things that we would take into consideration as part of the assessment and the discussions we would have with you as we proceed through your assessment.
Lovely, thanks, Kate. Just moving on a little bit from that, although we might come back to it if we get questions from the public around that. And this is one for you, Bev. Do I need specific qualifications to foster?
No, there's no specific qualifications. I suppose what we'd, as part of any fostering assessment, we'd look at people's experiences of, parenting and such things like that. But also we offer as part of the assessment process the Skills to Foster programme, which is preparation training for potential foster carers, which is really extensive and gives you a good overview of kind of fostering and insight into the role of a foster carer and some of the circumstances around why children come into care. So that's a really helpful, part of the assessment, really, to for potential applicants to have a good overview of fostering, really. But no specific qualifications are needed. But we'd obviously look at when we're assessing people, we'd look at their experiences, really.
Yeah, that's great, Bev. Perhaps if you could continue, because we've got a question here, which should be certainly one for you, Bev, as well. Somebody's asking, how can I find out more about fostering for Calderdale Council? So what kind of routes do we use for that? What kind of media coverage do we use?
So we've got a Facebook page, and also we've got a website, Foster for Calderdale, which people can access and put in expressions of interest, and then they get a call back from our service within 24 hours. We respond extremely quickly to those referrals that come in. And then,
so an old-fashioned telephone call.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. And then what would happen is we go through a screening, which is a set of questions, generic questions that we have, and then following on from that, if that was okay to proceed, we go out and visit the applicants to their home and go through an initial visit, and then proceed further from there, really.
So we do quite a lot at that first contact on the phone. So within 24 hours, we're asking some questions over the phone.
Yeah. Within 24 hours, we'd make contact, and then following that, if we were to proceed to an initial visit, we'd do that within 5 working days of the applicants being available. We do it as soon as we can, really, to speed up that process. We don't want people waiting, really. It's important that we get back to people as soon as possible.
Absolutely, because that's really good, because it will take a lot of kind of courage and confidence to pick up the phone and say, I'm interested in fostering, tell me more.
Absolutely.
carry on.
Yeah, and it's important that we give, the accurate and right information back to people that are inquiring, and, make
Yeah.
that process as smoothly as possible, really, and, offer some reassurance. And so it's quite good, really.
Pam,
Lovely. That's
can I just add a bit
of
to
course.
that question as well, because the public might notice that we're more, now that COVID's ended, or we're coming out of COVID, we're able to get out and about in the community more than we've been able to with recently. So what we've got an online presence, which obviously we share information about fostering, as Bev's explained, and people can ring up. But we've also, over this year, will be at a number of venues around Calderdale. Obviously, we'll have staff there that are able to answer any questions. We do sometimes find that people, they don't necessarily want to make a phone call, but they just want to ask a few questions. They'll go away and think about it, and then they'll come back and give us a call. So we will be advertising our fostering information events through social media, via the council website, and through word of mouth. Obviously, all our foster carers and staff are aware of the information events that we hold throughout the year. So those are opportunities for people to just come along, ask questions, or even pick up a leaflet just to get a bit of information and go away and think about it, if they don't feel ready to actually make a formal inquiry.
Lovely. Thanks, Kate. I know that we all need to reflect on these things, don't we? Take a little bit of time. Joe, I'd like to put this to you. I'd like to foster, but work commitments mean that I'm not at home sometimes during unsociable hours. Would I need to arrange care with a family member? What would you do in that kind of circumstance? What's the line there?
Yes, we, with each child that comes in, we get a specific delegated authority around from the social worker. So as a foster carer, we can choose who looks after our children. We can obviously ask the authority to say, oh, will you babysit for me tonight? And we pass them to somebody else. So we get our own support network around. So it could be your parents, my own siblings, my sisters, husband's family, and family friends, and they generally look after. Or if you've got older siblings, so my birth children are over 18, so they're available. So again, it's looking to your own support network really to manage the child. However, if it's working, there is a responsibility as a foster carer to attend meetings that they're generally through the day. So it's being available if the child needs to leave school for any reason, so any appointments. So we do have to be available generally. I know there's foster carers that work. I think it's just about talking to the supervising social worker and part of the assessment to see how that would work for a child. Yeah.
And I suppose, like any parent, that if you were out working, it was about being accessible. So if school rang you, were able to say, yeah, I'll be there in a quarter of an hour, have you?
Absolutely.
That you've got that provision.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that
Which is really
delegated authority is important, that you're saying, Joe, about members of your family who don't have to live in the household, but will come and be with the child, be the supervising adult there.
Yeah, and also the social worker would know, they have an overview of who's in my support network as well. So not that I have to ring in every time and say, oh, on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, so and so's going to look after my child. But it's they know generally who we've chosen in our support network.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just having an open communication.
Lovely. That's great. Thanks, Joe. We'll come back to you on this one, Bev. Could a bedroom to foster be okay with a skylight window? It isn't an attic bedroom, it's a double bedroom on the second floor with all the other bedrooms. So it's with all the other bedrooms, but a skylight window rather than obviously a conventional window by the sounds of it.
It's a good question, actually. I think we'd probably have to get some advice really on that in terms of health and safety, really. So we'd have to specifically look at that as part of the assessment, really, or the initial visit when we go out and see the applicants post initial screening, really. That's what we'd need to do initially.
So the purpose of windows is not just about light, but about emergency exits and health and safety.
Safety is absolutely. So we'd have to see the property really, and then take some advice, I think, really on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Bev. Well, I've got a couple of other questions here. I'll put this one to Kate because you've been quiet for a moment. So there, Kate. This is about support and what kind of support's available for people who are wanting to foster.
Well, if you want to foster for Calderdale and you become a foster carer for Calderdale, we offer a range of support. We've got to provide you with a supervising social worker. So once you're approved as a foster carer, you would have your own dedicated supervising social worker, and they would visit you or stay in contact with you at a level that you need, depending on where you are in your fostering journey or what might be happening for you and the children that you foster. So you would have support through your supervising social worker. We run a range of support groups for our foster carers. So that's where foster carers can meet together, obviously with members of staff from the service, and talk about issues or discuss things. Our foster carers, and Joe might want to say a little bit about this in a minute, but our foster carers offer each other peer support, and that's really important. So there are often networks between groups of foster carers who know one another or develop links through the children that they're looking after. For instance, if you've got siblings placed with different foster carers. We have a foster carer association, which is ran by foster carers, and we work alongside them as a fostering service to address any issues that the foster care association bring to us. We have a group for children in fostering households, because we recognise that that's really important, that everybody in the household is able to access support once you become a fostering family. So that's another area of support that foster carers can tap into for their own children or children living within their immediate family. In terms of support within the service, so if you are finding some challenges or you need a bit of specialist support, we do have colleagues that work across children's services that can offer specific support and advice on particular issues. So things like therapeutic parenting or strategies to help manage children's behaviour. We have a member of staff within our service who runs fostering clinics. So if you're experiencing some tricky issues, you and your supervising social worker could have a referral to the fostering clinic and get some dedicated advice specific to the particular needs of the child in your care or what you're experiencing as a carer looking after that child. So there's a whole range of support, and there are other benefits as well. We offer gym and swim membership for all members of fostering households, because we recognise that fostering can be demanding, so it's nice to get a bit of time out if you can. I'm going to just double check with my colleagues Bev and Joe to see if there's anything that I've missed, because we do offer a lot of support, and I think the main thing to say is that it is bespoke to whatever you need, so it can be increased if you feel that you need that, so Joe, do you want to say a little bit, because obviously you've got a role in offering peer support to carers, haven't you?
Yeah, I think the peer support is really important, because I think you're working alongside somebody who, can talk the talk and walk the walk, and we live, eat and breathe fostering. So I think if you get buddied up by a foster carer, that's, real good. But also reach out. The CFCA run coffee mornings every month. They also run one for preschool children, which, is really well supported. And I think the benefits of foster carers talking to each other about something so minor, when you live, when you're working and living in isolation in a fostering home, it can feel sometimes that you just need to reach out, and it's people who you can speak to confidentially about anything without any judgment, So it's really using the support that the Calderdale, offer really in all areas.
Okay, that's great, folks. I'll move on to some of the other questions, but just to add to that, in case a question doesn't come up, and I know it's always awkward talking about money, but obviously we offer financial payments to foster carers. I won't say that's the reward, but it's a financial support, which we can talk about in more detail should we want to do that. We've got a couple of questions here. Joe, this is specifically for you. Is there a special moment that stands out from your experience of fostering? I imagine there's many special moments, but so choose one.
One in particular is a young person who came to stay with us, and we've got a holiday home over on the East Coast, and we went there, and when we went to the cliff top, just for her to see the beach and the seaside, and she came back and she just said, Jojo, I just love this and I just love it so much. And this is my favourite place in the world. And just to see somebody enjoy something so, what we can all take for granted, and it wasn't financial, it wasn't anything, it was just, and I'm not saying that she'd never seen a seaside before, but just to feel safe, free, and just to enjoy that, was really, really special. But there's so many special moments, which is why, we're sat here 11 years on. There's so many special moments that I could just go on and on for. But yeah, it's just seeing the little rewards, the not the gratitude. I'd never look for, a child to be thankful for what we give them ever, because they never asked for any of this. So it's just a child to embrace life, really, and just see them feeling safe and giggle and laugh and play. That's the reward.
Well, I defy anybody who's listening to this not to have a bit of a lump in their throats listening to what you've just said. That is a bit of a tearjerker. It gets you right just there, doesn't it? I've been a social worker for many years, more years than I'd like to remember. It's only over 40 now, and that has certainly raised something again in me. Thanks for that, Joe. It's a lovely description. Right, well, Kate, we'll ask you this one then.
Okay.
Can you select is it possible to select a preference of the age of the foster child?
Yeah. So as part of the assessment and the discussions we would be having, we would be thinking with you about where your skills and experience lie, or where you might feel most confident in terms of being able to meet a child's needs based on a particular age. So yes, you could have an age preference in terms of what you think you might be best suited to in terms of age. But what I would say is that as a service, we need foster carers who can foster children across a wide age range. Sorry about that. And it's also important to remember that children's chronological ages might not match where they're at developmentally. So you might have a child, say for instance, 12 years old, who's actually functioning at a much younger age. So we would encourage you to think about the age range and your age preference. And sometimes we find that through those discussions, people change their view, or they change their expectations about fostering and what they'll be able to manage. Because ultimately, we get children that need foster placements of all ages. So it's more helpful for us if people will consider a broader range. But equally, we wouldn't push people to take a child if they didn't feel able to meet their needs based on age as well. So I think the key thing is just to make sure we have those open discussions and really think it through together as part of the assessment. And also, for approved foster carers, they might sometimes, through their experience, want to focus or specialise looking after older children, for instance, and we would certainly support foster carers who had a preference for looking after teenagers or younger children. Yeah.
Could I just add to that, Kate? Because sometimes, we've talked about chronological age not always meeting emotional age, and sometimes their emotional development is not actually caught up with the chronological age. However, it can sometimes be that a child much younger can have experiences that our older sons and daughters might have never experienced. So they can also be quite streetwise or have experienced different things that are much way beyond their years. So I think it's also to be mindful of that as well, and not in a negative way. It's just that the timeline of a child's age and development and presentation can really differ. And it's lovely to see somebody's commented to say how lovely it was for them to see their the children first belly laugh, and I think they've just captured exactly how I think to see children laughing. So I just wanted to say thanks to that person who's commented on that, because they really are special moments for us.
And it's infectious, isn't it? See
Really
children laughing and giggling becomes infectious. It's good for the soul.
so
Thanks,
relaxed.
Bo. Yeah, that's lovely. Now I'll put this to Bev. I'd love to foster, but worry my circumstances might change. What is the process if that happens?
So is that, do you mean, sorry, Pam, do you mean once they're approved foster carers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's a number of things there, isn't there? Like, well, if one gets pregnant, or if you and your partner split up, or if you lose your job, there'll be a number of different things that can happen just by way of everyone's life.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is it's important that, the approved foster carer speaks to their worker to have those discussions around the changes of circumstances. And obviously we support them as best we can through those circumstances, really. And if necessary, we might have to, go through some other form of assessment with them, or have some further discussions around if they need any additional support, think about their support network or how we can support them as a service. So I think, we'd look at, it depends on, the situation really, but we'd look at how we can support that particular foster carer really, and what that means for them as a foster carer, and for, any impact on any children that are in that placement with them really.
Thanks, Bev. I'm just moving around a bit because I can see that I'm dark. So I'm going to put another question and I'll move around whilst you answer this question. Kate, how long does the process take usually from inquiry to looking after a foster child?
Okay, so as you heard Bev say earlier, we aim to respond to all inquiries as quickly as we can within 24 hours. The process to become a foster carer, again, we would try and do that as soon as we could, to prevent delay. But we do have to do a number of checks as part of the assessment process, and some of those are out of our control in terms of how long they take. I think it's, as a general rule, it's probably around 4 to 5 months from the point at which you make an inquiry to the point at which you would be presented at fostering panel. The maximum amount of time that the local authority have is 8 months. So we would always try and obviously complete the whole process within that period of time. It would be very unusual for it to take that long. And often in those situations, it would probably be through circumstances out of our control. So as a general rule, you're looking at about 4 to 5 months from the point of inquiry through the assessment process, and then to be approved at fostering panel. And then obviously, because we need foster carers, generally speaking, once you're an approved foster carer, you're not waiting long before you get a placement.
That's a really good space of time as well, actually. And I know I've been through this process. And actually, it goes really quickly, doesn't it? And each of your assessment interviews certainly is something that gives you food for thought as well. Jo, I don't know if you want to just comment on the assessment process and how you managed that, how you experienced it, what it was like for you.
Yes, we raised our interest into the service, and then we attended the Skills to Foster, as Bev had mentioned before, which it was 5 sessions is that breaks it down. And while that's going on, your assessing social worker can still be coming out of part of the assessment, and you can use all your evidence from the Skills to Foster as part of that. It's a very reflective journey. Me and my husband found it very reflective. We could it takes you looking back through your own journey as well, to make sure that you've really thought about fostering. So we found it really reflective and really powerful, and actually exciting, because you know that there's an end coming towards it. So I think sometimes, some foster carers may think, oh, that was a little bit intrusive, but we're going to be looking after the most vulnerable children in Calderdale. And I think we've got to, understand that once you become a foster carer, you do share all really with your supervising social worker and the service. Obviously, all that's relevant, but it's about keeping that open communication throughout your assessment, really, so that there's no surprises. And then when you get to panel, you can celebrate when it goes through. And as Kate says, be decorating as well, ready for the child to come in, or children.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks, Jo. A question that I think we all know is one that is close to everybody's hearts. Can I foster if I have pets? Now, Bev, would you like to pick that up for us?
Yeah,
But should we
certainly.
stick to cats and dogs for the time being?
Cats and dogs, yeah. So as part of the assessment process, we'd obviously visit the applicant's home and obviously hope to meet the pets, cats, dogs, snakes, or bearded dragons or whatever. But I suppose just thinking of a recent assessment, we have had previously where we've had to have expert dog assessors to come out and assess applicants' dogs. So we could seek to access additional support if we needed to around that. But we do complete pet questionnaires. Sorry, I forgot what they were called then for a minute. Pet questionnaires as part of the assessment. So to make sure that the pets are safe and okay around children, because that's really important. Because some of the children that are can be placed in foster carers' homes, might have been around dogs and cats and not used to certain animals. So it's important that we need to make sure that the dogs and cats and animals are safe, really, for our vulnerable children, really.
And I suppose the other side of that as well is most children love a dog, don't they? And a cat, but most children just love being around a dog and can take lots of comfort actually from a dog.
And a lot of our foster carers do have pets actually, and are welcomed in the home, really.
Very, very therapeutic as well for the children. I know that, we've got 2 dogs and a cat, and it's been the best thing because the children can go talk to them and the animals don't talk back. They don't say anything. It's just that they can offload, have cuddles, and they're really special actually for pets.
Yeah, and also it's good, to go out and walk a pet, isn't it, with a child and get them to talk and chat, and it's always good kind of one-to-one time, isn't it, as well?
As long as we don't walk the bearded dragon, Bev, round the park.
Yeah, that might look a bit odd, right?
But we'll leave that thought hanging. Probably one for you here, Kate. What if I decide that fostering isn't for me once I've become a foster carer?
Well, that'd be
available.
Sorry, Pam, just say the last bit again, please.
Is there support available?
Yeah. So my first thought is that'd be a real shame if you'd gone through the process of becoming a foster carer and then felt that it wasn't for you. Obviously, we would want to work with you to understand what that's about, and to see whether or not we could support with that, depending on what those issues are. Sometimes, people... fostering can be demanding, and it can bring different pressures to families, and that's why the support that we talked about earlier that's available to foster carers is really important. It's really important that foster carers are open and honest with us, and that they have a relationship with us where they can say if they're struggling or they're finding it difficult, it's not what they expected. It might be in that scenario that we would maybe link you up with another foster carer. It would depend on what you were telling us about why you felt that it wasn't for you, and whether or not that's something we could work with you on to support you to continue. Or ultimately, if you did decide that fostering wasn't for you, then that would be okay as well. And you can resign from being a foster carer, and that could be an outcome. But I would hope that we could work with you to try and maybe prevent that from happening. That's what we would always try and do in the first instance, to support you to remain a foster carer. And it might be that we could look at what support you needed to continue, whether or not you needed to take a little break, which can sometimes happen, and sometimes foster carers need that, particularly when children move on from their care or things like that. So, we would be open to working with you to try and support you to continue fostering, if at all possible. Yeah.
Could I just add
I
to that
suppose,
as well?
sorry, Jo.
Sorry, I was just thinking, sometimes it could be that instead of stopping fostering short term, or what we call, for permanence or long term, people might have heard that. It could be that you might go to be support care for a little while, just to do, some support care. I know in other authorities that's called respite care, but in Calderdale we like to call that support care, because obviously respite's quite a negative word. So supporting other carers, and sometimes I think the idea of Calderdale Foster Carers Association can sound a bit stuffy. It's like the words of a foster carers association, but actually it's a group of foster carers that all want to support other foster carers. It's a body that is there to support carers for just that reason. And where a social worker may log out at 5 o'clock, there's always somebody there on the other side of the CFCA phone that would be there available, or another foster carer would be there available to support the carer at a time of need, really.
Just tell us a bit more about that, Jo, because that also can be about when the foster carers want to go on a holiday, a break, a planned holiday, a planned break, that there are other foster carers who will kind of share that care of that youngster. So it's not that it has to be, 24/7 every day of the year.
No, I mean, I think the local authority and most, foster carers in general want to take their young person away with them on holiday. So if a holiday was planned, and the child could be part of that, then that's the sort of enrichment we'd like to give the children. However, I know some foster carers who have had holidays booked, and then a young person's come placed within their family, and the holiday's not been possible to change, or for whatever reason. So the local authority would reach out to support carers who do that sort of care, really, that are there for holidays or maybe a weekend. If a family unit was struggling at the time, or if they had a child with demanding needs, that everybody needed a little bit of to breathe, it could be that support care is a planned intervention, so it's not a reactive, right, you're going to so and so's because of this. It's a planned intervention.
I suppose thinking as well as when the adults want to just be away on their own for a weekend, in a way that you would do with a birth family. It doesn't have to be a foster family, does it? That just says, these two adults in this family, I'd like a weekend away. And last time I met with some children. I met with some children in foster care in Barnsley just a couple of months back. It's Children Care Council, and they were saying our foster carers ought to have many more breaks without the kids, because they work so hard. They deserve to have a break without us. And it was like a positive thing. It wasn't a negative thing, actually, which I thought was really mature, that they understood, that it's just hard work. It's being a parent's hard work, isn't it?
I think just pulling from that, Pam, there's so many things to pull from that, even if it's not a short break to go away. I think you do really need time. So I think it's one thing to really think about how you make time for yourself care, whether it's just a meal, once the children have gone to bed, or to get some support care in your network that can look after the children one night a month or something for you to go out, whether it's to the pictures and not speak, or just so that you can unwind, or go out for the day, whatever it may look like. But I think that is really important, that if it's not the local authority that's providing the support care, because, as Kate says, it's not readily available. It's not just like, oh yeah, well, I'll just get somebody else to look after them, because that's not always the availability. But it is making time for yourself and reaching out to support care, other foster carers, or it could be a support network, in any way you can.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you. A few more questions in here then. Are foster carers entitled to set curfews and other household boundaries for older foster children? Bev, do you want to come in on that? Setting boundaries and other
So
household boundaries, setting curfews for older children and other boundaries within the house.
yeah,
I suppose it's about rules and boundaries, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, I think initially, so as part of any fostering household, we have what we call the safer care policy. So that kind of sets out the to make sure that the child's safe within that home. And it's like, it talks about routines, boundaries, not going into foster carers' bedrooms and things like that. But I think for older children, I think there'd be discussions with that young person, and also with the child's social worker, and I think and the foster carers, and you come up with some agreements in terms of kind of going out and coming in, and making sure that the young person's agreeable to that, and that everybody knows what you're all working towards, really. Because I mean, it depends on the child's age, really, the young person's age. If we're talking about a 15-year-old, we'd want them to be involved in those discussions, because ultimately, if they're not, the potentially, there's potential for them to come in at 10, 11 o'clock, and it's helpful if we have those discussions with the young person, really, to make sure that they're involved in those discussions and agreeable, really. But there certainly needs
social
to be
workers can assist with that as well, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Supervising social worker and the children and young person social worker would be involved in those discussions, as well as the foster carers. Yeah.
I think as a foster carer, it's really challenging, because when we've read what a child's background is, and you want to keep a child safe. And I think there's that conflict of thinking, a child can go out till 11 o'clock at night, and we know, streetwise how vulnerable they could be. So there is a conflict in our own heads, but it's remembering that the child does have those street skills, the survival skills. And it is about being open and thinking, well, if you want them in at 6 o'clock, and the, I don't know, 15, 16, because we want to know they're in and they're safe. It's about thinking, well, they're only going to keep rebelling. So it's about making the curfews realistic, so that they can work. Yeah, and working with, like Bev said, bringing the young person in and letting them feel that it's their choice, it's their decision, what's reasonable.
Because also,
and
as well,
asking
just
them
to add,
what they would do if they were the foster carer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think also, just to add, some of the the children and young people that we look after in foster care, have not had those boundaries, essentially. So they'll find it quite difficult initially. So it's really important to to involve them in those discussions, really.
Thanks all. We'll move on to our next one then. Kate, one for you. What is the usual age range of a foster child?
Sorry, Pam, could you say that again? Yeah, it broke up a little bit when you were speaking.
What is the usual age range of a foster child?
Well, children in foster care can be anything from a newborn baby right up until they turn 18. And obviously, at the point that a young person turns 18, they become a legal adult. What I would say on that is that we would encourage foster carers who are looking after older young people to enable those young people to stay put. And many foster families continue to care for children and young people once they've turned 18 and become a legal adult in the eyes of the law, but in many respects need looking after like any child, and need that continued care. So it is possible for young people to remain within their foster families once they've turned 18. And again, picking up on some of the discussions we had earlier around age ranges and preferences and things like that, that will be something that we would discuss with you, thinking about matching, thinking about what age range is going to work best for you. But I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, that we need foster carers that can care for a broad range of children of all ages. But we also love it when young people can remain within their foster families, and I will say, and I know Joe, will vouch for this, lots of children and young people that have been fostered, even if they don't continue to live with their foster carers once they've turned 18 as young adults, in most cases they maintain links with their foster family, even if they move on. That's really, really common. And Jo, you'll know that, and obviously we know that from speaking to the foster carers that we work with.
Absolutely.
The next question is kind of in the same vein, really. We've got a couple of questions which are similar here. Is most fostering long term? And you just talked about the benefits of staying put, and it's actually called staying put, is the kind of the service that we offer to youngsters beyond 18. And by way of, is it long term? I know that you're the expert here, but I know that children that come on a short term basis often end up staying on a much longer term basis because of events and probably court orders and issues around their birth parents often. So on that, is fostering long term, do we want to talk about the approval and the fact that that's the kind of thing that we'll discuss in the assessment? Bev, do you want to take that?
Yeah,
how
certainly.
How do we assess for, yeah.
So I suppose as part of any assessment, we'd talk with the applicants in terms of, age ranges and long-term, short-term support care. And I suppose, as part of our assessment, we'd look at that really. So it's difficult to answer. Each circumstance is different really. So, but as part of any assessment, we'd obviously have, many discussions about age ranges and preferences, and also, support care, long-term and short-term foster care really. And also that can change, post-approval. So, you could be approved as a short-term carer, and then circumstances might change. The child might stay in your care, and then, we could change your approval to long-term as well. So, and also, we could have foster carers that are approved as long-term carers, and then that could change to support care. So, it's kind of, it can be changeable really, but all that would be discussed as part of any assessment with the assessing social worker.
And you can
change during the course.
You could be a long term and short term. You might have somebody, with impermanence that are staying with you, and that is going to be with you forever. And then you could get somebody else in who may be getting ready for adoption or moving on. So you could be a foster carer with different approvals. Actually.
Yeah, and you could be approved for one child or two if siblings. So it just, all this would be discussed as part of the, the in-depth assessment really.
Just to continue that then, would foster carers of the 18 pluses continue to be supported by Calderdale if they still require care? And probably we want to talk there about the actual social work support, but also the financial support where we've got that kind of arrangement, the 18 pluses. Kate, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, so where young people remain with their foster family, where after they've turned 18, they are no longer fostered because they are an adult. But there is the staying put scheme which we run in Calderdale, and that does provide some support, some ongoing support by way of some financial support. The arrangement for that is different to the fostering financial support, because it takes into account that the young person is a legal adult, so it is slightly different, and the focus of care can sometimes look different, obviously, for young people when they are becoming young adults and making their own way in the world. Also, in terms of social worker support for young people post-18, if they've been looked after in foster care, they can continue to receive support from the Pathways service, which is people might have heard the term leaving care service. In Calderdale, it's the Pathways service. So that service is available to young people in the run up to them turning 18 and then post 18. But if as a foster carer you are wanting the young person to remain in your care post 18, in the lead up to that, we would be having those discussions with you about staying put, explaining the differences, what that means for you as a foster carer, what that means for your young person, and what those differences are in terms of the support and the setup of that, because they are different. There are some differences there. So,
Thanks, Kate.
yeah.
Just moving on, we've been talking quite generally about foster care and regulations and who can foster, etc., which should be kind of the same across most authorities. But why would we want people to come to Calderdale? What's the benefit of fostering for Calderdale? And I think somebody who's well placed to discuss that with us will be Jo. So, Jo, why foster for Calderdale?
I chose the local authority because it's not a financial gain, actually, where independent fostering agencies, which people are, you might hear IFA, which is an independent fostering agency, they do receive money for, to be an agency for foster carers and for children. So we chose that. And also it's a community thing. So we've got virtual school, which is the heads of the, for all children who are looked after and for special guardianship. Virtual school, they're part of Calderdale. We've got the social workers, the child social worker and our supervising social worker. They're still Calderdale, so they can communicate with each other. There's also the benefits, like I think Kate mentioned earlier about the swim and the gym pass, which again is a little incentive. There's also things from local businesses that there's little incentives there. It's just, I think the training, it's all in-house. We might get external providers offering certain things, specialist things. However, it's something, to me, that's really important, that we are one big community supporting the child, and we hear the team around the child. Well, we have got a full local authority around the child, really, which as a parent it's quite powerful for you to be our child's parent, because you give us support. That's my
But it'd be worth spending and it'd be worth just spending a couple of minutes talking about last weekend and the weekend coming, and how Calderdale have rallied around for fostering fortnight, which has included this weekend it'll be the chief executive. Last weekend we had the lead member, we had director of social services for children, we had senior officers and foster carers, potential foster carers, doing park runs with children as well, with their own children. And that is for me just exactly what a good authority does. It's right from the top there, these are our children, from the chief executive through to anybody who works for the council. These are our children. We've got parental responsibility. You can just talk us through a little bit about that, Jo, because I know you were there, weren't you, over the weekend as well, Jo, at the park. I understand you didn't do much running, but you were at the park.
I did it 3 times, actually, and it were meant to go around 4, but I managed 3 with an injured foot as well, might I add. But no, it was really, I did that with my my own son, and, children that are within my care, as did other foster carers. But yes, like you say, we were stood alongside the director of children and young people services. There was the counsellor, Adam Wilkinson, he was running alongside. And I think just for people to, the social workers were stood there, talking to the children, talking to our sons and daughters. It was just one big community, really. There was other foster carers there cheering us on, if they wasn't able to run, if they had younger children there. It was just really special, and to see actually some of the young people that came along, for them to run as well, and a sense of achievement that they all felt. And that the social workers were there to witness that. It was just lovely, really. And somebody's put on the support that I've had from Calderdale has been second to none. We've fostered for 15 years, and which I think, again, it's really, it's just, as I said, the training's there, everything about Calderdale really supporting as one team.
Yeah. And just to add, sorry, if you are a Calderdale foster carer, what that means is that children and young people that are from Calderdale can remain in Calderdale if they can't remain with their families. And that's really important, that we don't have to move children and young people out of Calderdale when they're born and from Calderdale. They can stay in Calderdale. And as Jo said, it's really important to us as a fostering service that our foster carers and children that we look after and our fostering families feel part of a fostering community in Calderdale. And we do that well, as Jo's explained, with the park runs and the events that we run for our foster families and for prospective foster carers as well.
I think as well.
And it's really difficult, isn't it?
Sorry.
Go on, sorry.
The CFCA
right,
work alongside the social workers, the team, fostering team, and provide joint activities and joint events, which again mean a lot for a community, the association to get together, pull the children and families together so that they're all one and they're just normal children without that chip on the shoulder of being fostered or looked after. I always just see my child as the child. It's not about the child looked after or fostered child. It's just about normalising it, isn't it? And when the community can come together and normalise it, the children just feel like just ordinary kids doing a park run or whatever it is.
Yeah. Which is a massive tick in the box, isn't it? For foster children to appear, and I do say appear because I think foster children now can often look much healthier and just one of the other kids than probably a few years since or a generation since, when it probably wasn't the case. We know that we've got quite a lot of things right, don't we, when they just look like anybody's children out on the street or at the park, whatever. Thanks for that. And people can't see, but what Jo was referring to earlier on, we've got a comment here from somebody who's been fostering now for 15 years in Calderdale and feel very supported even through some of the most difficult times, and training is superb, which is great. Somebody else saying 100% agree, we're new to foster carers and feel incredibly valued in the team. So some great accolades there. Thanks for going to the trouble to put that, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
We're just getting to it's 4 minutes to now, and there's another question here, which is a really good question to kind of start to round up on. This session has been very informative. Are there plans for others in the future? And I think that's a really good question, and it feels like once we get over one or two technical issues, that it's a resounding yes, we ought to do sessions like this in the future. Yeah. It means people can sit in their own homes, spend an hour and a half as opposed to having to travel, etc. I know the face-to-face is always good. There's always a place for face-to-face, without a doubt. But as an introduction and as a question and answer, this feels good. This feels like we've covered a lot of ground. If people want to put anything more in the chat about what it's been like, and give us some tips, say to us, that bit worked well, that bit didn't so much, and this is what we'd like to see in the future. Please do, and we'll obviously mull over those and take from that as well. And it would be nice if you've got any more questions, folks, to put in the chat before we round up.
Could I just add to this, Pam, about is there anything else? There is a Skills to Foster that's hoping to run in June. So if people were interested and wanted to know more, there will be a Skills to Foster sessions running. I think that's in June. Is it, Bev, next?
Yeah, it's in June. Also, yeah.
And also there's in Costa Coffee the first Tuesday of every month. I know that there's a social worker that'll be manning a table down there. If anybody wanted to go, but that's on Foster for Calderdale. I know that the team will keep sharing that just to let everybody know where somebody is to talk to.
Yeah, we have got a couple of events coming up actually. So we've got the Todmorden Park Run this week if anybody wants to come along and get some more information. We've got the Halifax Gala coming up as well, and also the Halifax Show. So we've got stalls at those events, but we've got a number of stalls that'll be on the website over the coming weeks as well.
And that's an opportunity to actually talk to people as well, isn't it, Bev? That people will be there from
absolutely.
The fostering service.
Come along. Yeah, there'll be many social workers there, so come along and get some advice, have a chat with us, pick up a leaflet, just come along and just get some advice.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, we're happy to talk to you.
And
anybody.
probably just to reiterate as well to folks, remember that you can watch this this stream played back, and if you know anybody who's interested in fostering who could have the benefit of the Q&A sessions, then direct them to the Facebook. And I think we're probably had our time, folks. So on behalf of the panel, I'm Pamela, and I realised I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm the Assistant Director for Safeguarding and Early Intervention, and I think these panel members deserve a huge round of applause because they've done a fantastic job. So well done, you folks, and thank you all for your comments, which have been really relevant and thought-provoking. And yes, if you've got folks who are interested, please share this Facebook with those as well. And yes, we'll run an event again. So thank you for your time and interest. Good night, all.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.